Mahavadanya avatar. Mahavadanya. So we know Maha, we all know avatar. Vadanya is a nice word. Prabhupada has translated it in different ways, right within Chaitanya Charitamrita. I don't need to see. They need to see. The most munificent, that's one of his favorites. Most munificent, or magnanimous, or in more simple language, very charitable. And sometimes he translated it as very learned, because a person who's learned is also charitable. A person who's learned is also charitable. And whether it's Grahastha who's charitable with their resources, or a Brahmana who's charitable with knowledge, or a sannyasi who's charitable with giving, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave mercy to others, if you sit right there, then people won't be able to get through. So you can't sit right there. I'm going to play police officer. So you could assist me. You could be the lieutenant, police officer. And don't let people sit there. You can't sit there. You can't sit there. You can't sit there. Oh. So from time to time, I'll interrupt to tell people, blow my whistle and say, you can't sit there. Okay. Mahavadanya, the most munificent. So munificent is a really nice word. It's not often used word in English. Don't put the mridanga there. People won't be able to get through. Thank you very much. Got my police officer whistle. Very charitable. And what's the reason from the verse? Most munificent is most charitable, is in terms of his giving Krishna prema. So that's our topic. The Vadanya feature of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the golden avatar. So let's say the verse together, not responsively. Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaura Trishe Namah. Let's sing it instead of say it. Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaura Trishe Namaha. Okay. Gaura Trishe. His complexion is Gaura, golden complexion. His name is Krishna Chaitanya. That's the name that he was given at the time of sannyas. We heard that the other day. So unto Krishnaya, Krishna Chaitanya, Namane, Gaura Trishe Namaha. So he's giving Pradayate Krishna Prema. And in this way, he's the Mahavadanyaya. Oh, most munificent incarnation, you are Krishna himself appearing as Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. You have assumed the golden color of Srimati Radharani. And you are widely distributing pure love of Krishna. We offer our respectful obeisances unto you. This is a direct quote from Chaitanya Charitamrita. And we're going to go through a series of examples, because his whole life was giving kindness, charity. And the starting point was Chankazi. Chankazi was the local Muslim ruler. He was a magistrate, but the magistrate was the next person in line. You can't sit there. You can't sit there. You can't sit there. You have to sit elsewhere. You can sit wherever you like except right there. Okay. Chandkazi was the magistrate. The system of governance at the time, there was a king, and beneath the king there was a magistrate. Something like when Bhaktivinoda Thakur was chief magistrate in Puri under the British. He is right beneath the head guy of the British government. It's a very powerful post. It's not just, sitting in a courtroom. It has much more meaning during that period of time than someone who sits in the judge's seat. It's administration. So he was Chandkazi, and when people had problems, they brought problems to him. And the Brahmanas were bringing problems. The Brahmanas were saying, this young Nimai, he's ruining, he's spoiling completely our culture, our Hindu culture, because the Hindu culture, one of the reasons, we discussed this the other day, one of the reasons for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to appear in Bengal, along with Navadvip being a seat of high learning, is the Brahmanas had deviated from Vaishnava Brahmanism and had become Karmakanda Brahmanas. Very misguided, and people were being misguided, and they were powerful. So when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu started the Sankirtan activities in the house of Srivas Thakur, they were disturbed. Not just it was a nuisance, Prabhupada pronounces it nuisance, but nuisance, not just a nuisance for their, too much, too loud, but it was taking people's attention away from the Karmakanda rituals, which was their bread and butter, to something else. So it was a confrontation situation, and so they brought the problem to the Qazi. And you know what the Qazi did? He ordered it was stopped. They didn't stop, and so he had his constables working under him as the magistrate to break the mridanga. When the mridanga was broken, Nimai Pandit started, in Prabhupada's words, the first civil disobedience movement, long before Gandhi. And he was also very influential, although he was young. He was around 20 at the time. Tens of thousands followed him. And you can see from the painting, there's lots of people. And so that they not only they're defiant, but they went to all the marketplaces, the major marketplaces, with the big Sankirtan. And it went on all day long. And at night, with torches in their hand, they came to the home of Chandkazi. Chandkazi saw tens of thousands of angry Bengalis, and he hid. Don't mess with angry Bengalis. Your life's at risk. Specifically, it says he hid under his bed. And there was a relationship between Chandkazi and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's father. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's father was Jagannath Mishra, Purandara Jagannath Mishra, and Chandkazi spoke, I'm like your uncle, because I'm like a brother to your father, so I'm like your uncle. So, yes, Chacha, let's sit down and talk. So he came. Nothing to worry. These tens of thousands of angry Bengalis, they only do something upon my indication. Let us sit and have a conversation. So they had conversation. There's the string of torch lights going back and back and back. They had some introductory remarks, and Lord Chaitanya, you know the story, but there was a discussion about cow killing. What kind of religion is this that you kill your mother and your father? What kind of religion? And you can't sit there. Thank you. I've been through this a few times in different venues. So they had discussions about the religion, and it turns out Chaitanya was not only learned in his scriptures, but he was learned in the Vedic scriptures. So he understood within Vedic scriptures that there was a process of sacrificing an animal. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explained they're not eating the animal, they're testing the power of the brahmanas who can enter into the fire and then come out of the fire a young form. So Chankazi, he asked him, why were you hiding upstairs? He said, I'll tell you privately. He said, we're amongst friends, tens of thousands of friends. So you can say. So he explained that the night before, not in a dream, but this roaring creature, half man, half lion, pounced on my chest and began ripping my chest and said, I would kill you, but you better not stop this Sankirtan of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu anymore. And he opened his shirt, and there were the claw marks of Lord Nrsingadev. Lord Chaitanya embraced him. There's a nice spot over here. You can see the screen. I'm half speaker and half police officer. Okay. So he then became very supportive. One might say he became converted to Vaishnavism, but he proclaimed, henceforward, in my rule and any generations after my rule, the Sankirtan can go on without interruption. And there's a nice painting where Lord Chaitanya, it shows him in sannyas attire, but he wasn't a sannyasi yet. With Chankazi, they engaged in Sankirtan together. So, Mahavanyaya. We heard about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's accepting sannyas, and we heard how actually he gave mercy to Keshava Bharati, who, after he became the sannyas guru of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Keshava Bharati, became a Vaishnava, and he was engaged in singing and dancing and chanting with all the Vaishnavas. And then with his becoming involved in Vaishnavism like that, all of his followers also became involved in Vaishnavism. No, it's not everything, because the life of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is giving mercy and giving mercy and giving mercy. But I'm going to go now to after he reached Jagannath Puri, and we heard about his giving mercy to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and the tens of thousands of sannyas followers of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. After some months, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to go on tour of South India. You know the pastime? The pastime was he had a brother his older brother. An older brother's name was Vishvarup. Vishvarup had taken sannyas, and he had taken the sannyas name of Shankararanya. And he told the devotees in Puri he wanted to go find his brother in South India, although he knew that his brother had already departed this world. But he used that as an excuse. And after some time he left, and he headed on a southern travel. And one of the explanations given is as he was passing along the road, he would sing very loudly, Krishna, 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 Hey, Krishna, 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 Ram. Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava Rakshamam. Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava Pahimam. And over again in ecstatic joy. And people would see him in this mood and come forward and clap along with him and sing along with him. And many persons wanted to join him. They would follow him. And he said, no, don't follow me. You'll go back to your village. And in your village, you take this same process and the same joy, the mood of loving ecstasy in chanting Krishna's name, and pass it on amongst your village people. And the author, Krishnadas Kaviraj, says, and this happened throughout the whole of his travels for 2 years in South India. And this, in other words, he's giving the mercy of the congregational chanting of the holy name in this, what do you call it? Downline? What's that word for that? You give it to somebody and they give it to somebody and they give it to somebody. So like that. Huh? No, but no, there's a conventional term. Huh? I can't hear you. So you know what it is, what I'm saying, whatever the term is. So people became involved in the chanting of the holy name. The first place he stopped, that's mentioned specifically, is Kurma Kshetra. Sometimes it's also known as Kurma Sthan. So Kurma Kshetra is a nice place. We went into South India and travel, went to the place. It's very nice. They have turtles everywhere. A whole big thing of many turtles. But that came later. There was a temple, a Kurma Dev temple in Kurmastan. And in the course of his visit to Kurma Kshetra, he came across a leper. The leper was a Brahmana whose name was Vasudeva. And he delivered Vasudeva, the leper. It was on his way out of Kurma Kshetra, and he saw the leper, who was very shy because his body was a wreck. But he also couldn't help himself. He wanted the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who was passing through his town. And so he approached him and fell at his feet. And please give me your mercy. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu embraced him. And when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu embraced him, his body became free from leprosy. It's like a miracle cure. And Vasudeva, the Brahmin, said many things. It's one thing to cure a body that's so diseased like my body, but it's another thing to awaken love of God that you're doing wherever you go. And I'm somehow a recipient of that mercy. So how can I repay you? Just go on chanting the holy name and encourage people to chant the holy name. Before he met Vasudeva, so this Vasudevamrita Prada, he became known by that name, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, one who delivered nectar or amrita to the leper Vasudeva. The nectar wasn't just miracle cure or changing his bodily condition. The miracle cure was awakening love of God. Krishna Prema Pradayate. Before that, he met a Brahmana at Kurmakshetra, whose name, interesting, was all Kurma. And Kurma met Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at the temple, and he invited him to come to his home to feed him because he was a Brahmana feeding a sannyasi. He was very happy. He fed him very sumptuously. After feeding him, he fed his family, and they took remnants from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he had an appeal and said, "Please let me travel with you." And Mahaprabhu was very strong. He said, "Don't speak like that ever again. Rather, you should stay in your position, and you should engage others in the chanting of the holy name." And many of you know the celebrated verse. It was spoken by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in this chapter. Yadi Dekha Tari Kaha Krishna Upadesh Amar Agyai Guru Hana Tare Desh. Instruction that has stayed with us for so many years. That this is the instruction to Kurma, and thus also the instruction to us. And in the course of his South India travel, many nice things, so I can't tell them all. I mean, I'll mention one, because there was a Brahmin in South India who invited Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to come to his home for lunch. And Mahaprabhu said, "Very well, I'll take my midday bath, I'll come back and we'll have lunch." And so when he came back, the Brahmin was sitting there in meditation. And he asked, "My dear Brahmin friend, what's your plan? Is lunch ready?" And he said, "I'm waiting for Lakshman to bring back the ingredients for lunch." And Mahaprabhu could understand this was his meditation, his ecstasy. Very soon he'll come. So after some time, he prepared lunch. And Mahaprabhu accepted the lunch and then said, "My dear Brahmin, now you please take." And the Brahmin said, "I'm fasting." "Why is that?" "I'm fasting because Sita's been kidnapped. And how can I have any meal? I should fast until I'm dead, because Sita has been kidnapped by Ravan." And Mahaprabhu said, No. Please don't misunderstand. It's not that Sita was kidnapped by Ravana. It was a false Sita that was kidnapped by Ravana. I assure you, my dear Brahmin, Sita was not kidnapped. Please trust me. So he accepted, and he cooked for himself. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then traveled further, and deep in South India, he came across a temple where they had a reference that it was a Maya Sita that was kidnapped. He made a copy, and he brought it back, like big distance, to the Brahmin. And when he saw the Brahmin, he presented the book to him. And the Brahmin was very happy. And he said, "My dear Brahmin, could you tell me, before when I came, you were chanting Ram's name constantly, but now you're chanting Krishna's name constantly. Could you explain?" He said, "It's by your influence. The affinity that I had for constantly chanting Ram's name is now replaced by my chanting of Krishna's name." It was a profound experience. But he gave Krishna prema to someone who already had prema for Lord Ramachandra, spontaneous standard of devotional service. Many things in his South India travel. Because we spoke yesterday evening about Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, I had to say something about Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and the further mercy. After Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya became a Vaishnav, from a Mayavad teacher to a great Vaishnav, he invited Mahaprabhu to have a meal at his home. Mahaprabhu accepted. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was a little excessive. He, so many things. And Mahaprabhu said, "Too many things. Just leave a morsel and I'm fine." And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said, "You take whatever you like and the rest will be Mahaprasad." So he began eating. And if you look closely in the background, you'll see another person. And that's Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's son, whose name was Amogha. Amogha. And Amogha, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya had a system where Mahaprabhu could have a place to have his meal that no one could come and disturb him and interrupt him. But his son knew his way around the house, so he peeked in the door and started saying bad things to Mahaprabhu about, you're eating so much, what kind of sannyasi are you? And Mahaprabhu stopped. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya became very distressed, and he said many heavy things. May his wife become a widow. And his wife is looking, holding her head. And Mahaprabhu wasn't disturbed. But because of that offense, Amogha contracted a very serious disease. And he was with fever that was so high, he couldn't move. He was bedridden. Mahaprabhu went to see him and placed his hand on Amogha's chest and said, Amogha, please, Krishna is within your heart. Please acknowledge the fact that Krishna is not pleased when you make criticism of great personalities. So please rise, become well again. So another miracle cure. And Amogha not only became free from his fever and his health condition, but he became an advanced Vaishnav like his father. Another miracle kind of situation, different but somewhat similar, was in relation to Gopinath Pattanayak. Gopinath Pattanayak was one of 5 brothers. One of his most exalted brothers was Ramananda Roy. Anyone here not know who was Ramananda? We're going to see some images of Ramananda Roy shortly. So Ramananda Roy was one of the 2 most intimate associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Sarup Damodar and Ramananda Roy. And Ramananda Roy, he and Gopinath were 2 brothers, and they were the total of 5 brothers. Their father was Pandu, and the 5 brothers were the 5 Pandavas in Krishna Lila, but they're now performing their activities in Gaur Lila. So Gopinath Pattanayak was given the title Pattanayak. It's his title because he had some service for the king. The service for the king was, he was a tax collector. So he got the title Pattanayak, but his name was Gopinath Roy, but he came Gopinath Pattanayak. And one of the 5 sons, and he had a service of collecting taxes and giving taxes to the king. But what he did was he bypassed the person who he was supposed to give the taxes to and was skimming. He was stealing from the king. And the son of the king, his name we find out later, Purushottam Dev. But in this chapter, he's just called Bada Jana. Just like Haridas Thakur. There's Bada Haridas and there's Chota Haridas. Bada is senior and Chota is junior. Chota Haridas. Haridas Thakur was Bada Haridas. Some of you know the Kirtan singer. Bada Hari. There's Chota Hari. There's Chota Haridas. We'll hear about Chota Haridas shortly. Bada Jana, the eldest son of King Prataparudra, detected that he was stealing. He wasn't giving to the king what he should be giving to the king from all that he had collected. He was allowed to keep something, and he would give the lion's share to the king. So he detected, so he went and confronted Gopinath. Said, "You're stealing money from the king. This isn't right. You should give the taxes to the king, the full amount." He said, "I don't have it right now, but I'll give you some horses, and with the horses you can get some money, and I'll get the rest." So Bada Jana took the horses and indicated the amount for the horses was way below what it should be. So when Bada Jana came back to get the rest of the money, he said, "This is how much money I got for the horses." And Gopinath said, why is the price so low? The horses don't do like this, because Bada Jana had a idiosyncrasy. He would move his neck. So he was feeling insulted, naturally, because it was an insult. So the son went to the father. Bada Jana went to the king, Prataparudra, and said, "Gopinath won't give the rest of the money." It wasn't true, but that's what he said. And his father said, well, whatever the means, you get the money from him. So with that word from the king, the son of the king decided to retaliate. Don't mess with political people, because they can do mean things. Grandfather Bhishma declares this in Mahabharata. So Bada Jana put him on the changa. Changa is a wooden platform, and underneath the wooden platform there's upraised swords, and at the right moment the wooden platform is removed, the person on the wooden platform falls, gets impaled by the swords, and they're finished. It's like a death penalty, and very, very cruel penalty. So Gopinath Patanaik was put on the changa. And the people in Puri, "Oh no, Gopinath, he's a very dear family member of Bhavananda Roy, and do something. Lord Chaitanya didn't do anything. He said, "Don't bother me. If he's taken money from the king has a right to punish him how he wants to punish him. He has no business taking the money of the king. Don't bother with these material affairs. If you come back again, I'm leaving Puri." So what to do? Because the family, headed by Bhavananda Roy and Ramananda Roy, everyone knows they're very dear devotees of Lord Chaitanya. But he's saying, "Don't bother me." So there are a number of things happened without telling the whole story. And the message went to the king. Lord Chaitanya didn't do anything, but the message went to the king. "Gopinath Patanaik is on the changa. Your son put him on the changa because he hasn't given all the money to you, to the king." He said, "Really? I didn't say put him on a changa. I said just get the money that's owed to the king, go to the treasury by one means or another. You kill him, he won't get the money." That's not what I said. So he went to the place where he just gave an order that said Gopinath should be taken off the changa, and if he isn't receiving enough money for his service of collecting taxes, then I'll double the amount that he is allowed to keep. And not only that, he gets his service back, he gets double his salary, and I'll honor him with a silken wrapper. It's a way, it's part of culture, even today, where someone is honored and they're given a silken chadar around their shoulders. Gopinath was about to be killed, and now he's being approached to give him double his salary, giving his tax collecting territory back, and being honored by the king. And he understood it's the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So then Gopinath and his father and his 4 brothers went to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and pleaded, "You're so merciful. that, this was going to happen to me, and instead this other thing happened to me. And I've understood the lesson. The lesson is I should do my prescribed duty, but I'm not entitled to the results of my prescribed duty. But everything is meant for you. So he had also become a lover of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, even more so than before, and his devotion was fixed by the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The long chapter, I'm just giving a synopsis of a long chapter. It's a very important part of his merciful nature. He did nothing. He said, I'm leaving if you bother me again. But by his internal potency, everything became nice, including Gopinath getting an important lesson. So that he instructed him never misuse another's property, certainly not the property of a Brahmana or the king. Never misuse property of others. So back to the flow of his giving of his mercy. Long, detailed section in Chaitanya Charitamrita about King Prataparudra getting Lord Chaitanya's mercy. And I'm not going to tell the whole thing because we'd be here for too long. You know who is King Prataparudra? You heard his name before? When Lord Chaitanya moved to Puri, there was a king. The king was not just the king of Puri, he was the king of Orissa. And Orissa at that time wasn't the same as the Orissa today. Orissa at that time extended up into Bengal. You know geography a little bit? India, geography? Orissa is on the eastern side of India. And north of Orissa is West Bengal. So the kingdom of King Prataparudra extended into what is today's the southern part of West Bengal and extended down into the next state, which is now Tamil Nadu. So it was a big kingdom. And not only was it a big kingdom, but he was a very, very powerful king. Famous. That is, famous in this sense. The invaders from the north, the Muslim, mainly the Mughals, ruled so much of the north of India, but they couldn't get into Orissa because he was so powerful. Powerful. Every time they tried many times. There's history. And he repelled them. He was too powerful. His father was also like that. Very, very powerful Kshatriya. There's details which we won't tell. But at the same time he was a powerful Kshatriya, he was a deeply devotee of Krishna and, of course, Lord Jagannath. So a little bit, just touching, not the detail. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to Puri, the king wasn't in Puri at the time. His capital was Cuttack. And when he was visiting in his kingdom, visiting Jagannath Puri, he met with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, because as you remember from yesterday evening, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was appointed the chief priest of his kingdom, with the spiritual part of his kingdom being Jagannath Puri, for this whole kingdom. So when he came to Puri, he met with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And he said, I heard there's this wonderful sannyasi here. Can you tell me something about him? And very, very simply, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said, he's not just a sannyasi. In your kingdom is residing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna Chaitanya. And immediately, just by hearing from Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he accepted. Because he was an elevated person. And Sarvabhauma was the most scholarly, and he just accepted. Oh, he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Can I meet him? He said, oh, he's very strict. He doesn't meet worldly people. And you're the king, you have a worldly position. So he won't meet you. I can try. Some time passed. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is now going to travel in South India. Why are you letting him go if he's the personality of Godhead? Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said, he's independent-minded. No one can check his activities. So you're very fortunate that this is his headquarters. He'll come back. When he came back, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya approached the king and said, can you make an arrangement for his residence? Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya asked the king, can you make an arrangement for his residence? He said, I know a perfect place. My Diksha Guru is, we heard this yesterday. Does anybody remember from yesterday? Kashi Mishra? Kashi Mishra? There's a wonderful place, quiet, a little secluded, not opulent at all, very suited for a renounced person. So he was given a place at the Gambhira, at the house of Kashi Mishra, arranged by King Prataparudra at the request of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came back to Puri from his 2 years of South India travel, a messenger was sent to go to Bengal and inform the devotees he's come back. So they all came, and this painting is showing the Jagannath temple in the center in the background. The king is on the rooftop of his palace, and he's with Gopinath Acharya, and he sees this ecstatic kirtan going on down below. And he wants to know who's who, and Gopinath Acharya, because he knows everybody, he says by name, this is this one, that's that one. And I've never seen anything like this. I've seen kirtan before, but I've not seen kirtan like this. Gopinath Acharya said it's Prem Sankirtan, not just Sankirtan. They're ecstatic dancing, ecstatic chanting, etc., etc. Many things happened where, again, the king, being a great devotee, he's a warrior, powerful warrior, but he's a great devotee, requesting Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya to somehow make an arrangement so he could have his personal darshan. He said he won't do that. But he made a suggestion. He said, you have a son, and your son is the representative of the father, so you can send your son. I'll see if I can arrange that. So his son was sent, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu embraced his son, and his son became transformed, ecstatic, and his father embraced his son, who became transformed in ecstatic devotion by contact with his son, who had been transformed by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then more things and more things and more things and more things. Finally, the king was saying, if I can't get audience with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu because I'm a king and he doesn't deal with worldly people, I'll just stop being king. I'll become a mendicant. And I'll give up my entire kingdom, and then maybe he'll meet with me, because it was more important to him to have that sadhu sangha than a kingdom. Although he's a powerful Kshatriya, because he was such a Vaishnava. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya then suggested, I have another idea. What's that? When it comes time for Rath Yatra, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will go to the Jagannath Ballabha Gardens. Some of you have been to Puri. Jagannath Ballabha Gardens is just down the road. It's between the Jagannath temple and the place Gundicha, where the deity would go at the end of the procession and stay for some days and then go back to the temple. So on the left-hand side, going up the Grand Road, is the Jagannath Ballabha Garden. So when Mahaprabhu will stop to rest during the Rath Yatra, because it goes the whole day, then you can dress in simple attire, not that of a king, but a simple Vaishnava attire, and recite Gopi Gita to him. What's Gopi Gita? Gopi Gita is a section from Canto 10, Chapter 33, of Srimad Bhagavatam, where the gopis are singing, their mood of loving is separation from Krishna. So that's what happened. But before that happened, the day of Rath Yatra arrived, and he saw the king sweeping, as he would regularly do, with a golden-handled broom before Lord Jagannath, as he was brought from the temple to be placed on the cart. And that in itself, later, Mahaprabhu said, because of that humble service to Lord Jagannath, I gave him my mercy. But he gave him his mercy in a tricky way. During the Rath Yatra itself, Mahaprabhu was dancing and dancing and dancing, and at one time he fell in a mood of ecstatic love, and the king caught him so he wouldn't crash on the ground. Lord Chaitanya came to external consciousness and said, "Oh no, I've been touched by a materialistic person." So it's kind of a mercy and kind of an insult. But at the end, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was resting in the Jagannath Vallabh garden, the king came very quietly and, massaging the legs of Mahaprabhu, began reciting Gopi Gita. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu looked up. "Who are you? You're so merciful. Please say it again, say it again." And he continued saying verses from the Bhagavatam for the pleasure of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which is exactly what he wanted. You see in the background, there's the dome of the Jagannath temple. It's a much longer story with details and details and details, but the detachment from worldly and increasing attachment to Lord Chaitanya's association marked the progress of King Prataparudra's strong desire, increasingly strong desire, and Mahaprabhu gave his mercy. And King Prataparudra was very, very, very happy. There's many other stories, and we're going to run out of time, so I have to go more quickly. This is Jagatananda Pandit, a very dear associate of Mahaprabhu. And there's a whole book written by him and about his kind of love, which is very unique. While Jagatananda was also a sannyasi, he followed Lord Chaitanya very carefully. He was also a sannyasi, but he had a relationship with Lord Chaitanya where he wanted Lord Chaitanya to not engage in austerities. He wanted him to have nice things. And Lord Chaitanya objected. "I don't have nice things. I'm a sannyasi. People will criticize me." So one time, Jagatananda was visiting in Navadvip. And he went annually, actually, to Navadvip to give word of what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's activities to the residents of Navadvip, and very kindly describe what he did, those kinds of discussions. And he would give loving association to them otherwise. And while he was there at the house of Srivas, he made very laboriously a clay pot filled with sandalwood oil. I don't know how you make sandalwood oil from sandalwood, but he knew how. It takes a lot of time somehow. And he brought back the sandalwood oil with the plan that he wanted Mahaprabhu to accept it and use it. And Mahaprabhu, when it was given, Jagatananda didn't give it to him directly. Jagatananda gave it to his servant, Govinda, and said, "Give this to Mahaprabhu. I want him to use it." When he saw what it was, he said, "I can't use this. It has nice fragrance. People will, if I walk around wearing this sandalwood oil, people will say, 'What kind of sannyasi is this?' The fragrance will go everywhere. So I can't accept it, but it has a nice use for it. It can be put in the oil, containers around the side of the Jagannath temple and make a nice fragrance for burning oil, sandalwood oil, in the temple. Govinda didn't do that. He didn't know what to do. So some days later, Jagadananda came and asked, did he use the oil? And Govinda didn't want to say no. He saw the pot. He picked up the pot, walked out of the Gambhira and smashed it on the ground. That's what this painting is. And the oil went spewing all over the place. And he went off and started pouting. He locked himself in his room from the inside and was fasting for 3 days. He was in a pout fit. You never do that, right? No. So Lord Chaitanya heard Jagadananda is fasting and he's pouting. He feels hurt because I didn't use his sandalwood oil. So he went to his room. Jaga, I hear you're fasting. And because you're fasting, I've been fasting too. I'm very hungry. Can you come out of your room and cook for me? I'm very hungry. Because Jagadananda was a very good cook, so he immediately opened the door, said, I have to bathe, and he made the cooking, big feast. Fed Lord Chaitanya. As soon as he ate something, he gave him something more, and he ate something of that, he gave something more, and Lord Chaitanya ate 3 times what he normally eats and said, please stop, I can't take anything more. He said, you're the personality of God and you can eat everything. I'm finished, now I want to see you eat. Jagadananda, I want to see you eat. He said, I have to take bath and then I can eat. I'll wait. And he ate. And so that's a giving of mercy. Now Jagadananda already had Krishna Prema. He had Gora Prema as well. But he gave his mercy, Mahavadanyaya, to Jagadananda. He also gave his mercy, as we know, to Sanatana Goswami, who became a perfected representative of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Here's a painting of Ramananda Roy. When Lord Chaitanya went on his South India tour, he was advised by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya to meet Ramananda Roy. He said, before, when I was traveling, I met him. I thought he was a sentimentalist. But now that I've become a devotee, I understand he's the most elevated person. So when you travel in South India, please meet him. At that time, he was the governor of, when Prabhupada wrote this, it was Madras, or Chennai. Now, the kingdom of Prataparudra extended all the way to Chennai and all the way into parts of Bengal. It was a big kingdom, powerful king. So this is where they meet, by the side of the Godavari River, and with the Ramananda Roy were his ministers and some brahmanas, and over on the other side is the little brahmachari who was traveling with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and they embraced with such affection. People were wondering, what's going on? That's what you see in the painting. What's this? And so they made an arrangement. They stopped. They made an arrangement to meet in the evening. And that evening is that very nice, there's a whole section where Lord Chaitanya is asking questions for Ramananda Roy to respond. And they go through higher and higher and higher and higher and higher stages of bhakti. And Ramananda Roy says, I've never spoken these words before. You're making me speak. You're a puppeteer, and I'm the puppet. You're making me speak whatever you want. And when he got to the culmination, Lord Chaitanya showed him, as the painting is depicting, his form of Radha and Krishna. And Ramananda Roy fainted. But it's a celebrated section where Lord Chaitanya gave maximum mercy to Ramananda Roy because he was so qualified. We mentioned Bada Haridas was the name of Haridas Thakur. There's Chota Haridas, who Lord Chaitanya showed an example by scolding him, because Chota Haridas, one time he was also engaged to beg alms for Lord Chaitanya's cooking, and he dilly-dallied for some time with a lady from whom he was receiving alms. And Mahaprabhu, while he was eating the cooking, where did he get these wonderful ingredients? From so-and-so Mataji. I don't want to see Chota Haridas again. Tell him he's never to come and see me ever again. And Chota Haridas was, what? Doesn't want to see me again. He tried this and tried that and tried this and tried that. And Mahaprabhu was firm. I don't want to see him again for 10,000 lifetimes. So he went to the sacred river and drowned himself. And everyone was like, wow. Because Mahaprabhu wanted to teach, you're in a renowned position. You don't associate like this with women. No, he didn't do anything wrong. He was just accepting alms. But he apparently stayed longer than he needed to, and Mahaprabhu knew that, and that was the chastisement. It was to correct others who had such tendencies in the name of renunciation to associate loosely with women. Mahaprabhu was very strict. And it is said, the painting is showing that Chota Haridas was, as Haridas Thakur was very good in chanting japa, Chota Haridas was very good in kirtan. So it is said that Mahaprabhu would sometimes go to the shore in the evening and Chota Haridas would sing for him. That's what this painting is showing. So he engaged Chota Haridas in teaching others a lesson, but he didn't withdraw his mercy from Chota Haridas. He gave him some other service. So aside from what may look like punishment, there's almost done here. This is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu giving his mercy to the animals in the forest of Jharkhand. You know about this place? Jharkhand? You've heard of it?
He's from Jharkhand.
Is that where you're from? Bihar it got divided into two. And one part of it is Jharkhand. You're aware. You're not responding. Are you aware or not? You are aware. This is your son? I'm picking on him. Is it okay? I'm engaging him, not picking on him. Okay. So, Jharkhand forest was a place where Mahaprabhu was passing through on his way to Vrindavan. And on his way through Vrindavan, passing through the Jharkhand forest, he was giving his mercy even to the animals. There's a nice devotee, Prabhupada disciple, Amala Bhakta. Some of you know him by name, Amala Bhakta. He has narrated the entire Chaitanya Charitamrita. I listened to it 33 times. There was a time when we didn't have, the kind of players we have now. It was the cassette, and he with 3 boxes, and I was very, because I liked his narration, so I listened to it. I counted them 33 times. And this section, when he gets to Lord Chaitanya passing through the Jharkhand forest, he makes the sound of the elephants and the tigers and the deer chanting Hare Krishna. Because they weren't just like dancing and embracing each other, but they were chanting Hare Krishna. So he was capable like that of engaging everyone. There's a nice pastime. This is almost the last slide. This is Lord Chaitanya embracing 7 sal trees, and by embracing the sal trees, they attained Vaikuntha. It's a nice pastime. So even trees he gave compassion to. Even trees, even animals, even everyone. And this evening, for the Sunday feast class, we're going to be discussing one of the features of Lord Chaitanya, And one of the features of Lord Chaitanya was his mood of Srimati Radharani. We'll hear one of the reasons for his appearing and performing external and internal reasons. And there's a nice little, I hope it works, nice little video where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is shown becoming Srimati Radharani and Srimati Radharani becoming Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And it comes back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. So it's very nice. So he was mercifully not only giving Krishna Prema Pradayate, but giving Braja Prem. Now it is said this painting that you see when he stops at Lord Chaitanya, it is said, I don't know if it's true, but it was a painting that was commissioned during his lifetime to make a painting of what he actually looked like. So according to some persons, that's what Lord Chaitanya actually looked like, with a shaved head and very pleasing smile. Okay, so let's go back. Mahavadanya Avatar. So let's see if there's some discussion. Now, there are many other pastimes didn't touch on because of time, but we took a lot of your time. But it's nice hearing Gaura Leela. Any comments? Yes. There's a little portable microphone, and I hope it works.
Thank you, Maharaj, for a very nice class. In the beginning of the lecture, you mentioned the story of Chand Kazi, where Lord Narasimhadev came in his dream and reprimanded him for stopping the Sankirtan.
Yes.
Recently, we saw what happened in Bangladesh, where not only Hindus, but even Vaishnavas were attacked, Mridangas were broken, and all kinds of bad things happened. So I wonder sometimes why we do not see a help from divine. Is it that we are not that pure anymore, or are we being tested in the current time?
Both. At least my consideration is more the former. Protection is there, and protection doesn't necessarily come this way. It may come that way or some other way or some other way. Like, for example, in Juhu, when there was an attack with weapons and guns and everything to tear down the temple, and it was checked. No, Prabhupada was involved, so the purity was there. But you know that the story, there was a little bell, and that stayed even when they tried to break down the rest of the temple. The deities were okay, the pujari, Mataji, was okay, and that little bell was okay. And it created a backlash, because that's part of the protection. Persons objected to what had been done. The violence that was used, what to speak of the nature of trying to destroy a temple. Although it wasn't a full-fledged building, but it was a place that's housing the deity. So there was a pushback from people. It served as an impetus for people to rally behind. Not the same thing, but the same principle is when there was the local people around the Bhaktivedanta Manor wanted to shut it down because there was too much congestion on the roads, which is probably a legitimate reason, because these are people that live off in a pristine neighborhood, and when the Sunday program would come, the road to be jammed, and week after week after week after week. So they complained. So they're given a certain period of time to figure out a problem. That's a solution. So the solution came by their buying more pieces of land, and people came forward so they can buy more pieces of land. And now with those more pieces of land, they have a Goshamal, because they didn't have before. So adversity can lead to opportunity. Now, it doesn't mean it's nice, but how Krishna gives protection can look differently in different situations. I don't know the details that you're speaking about, but somehow Krishna's protection will come, and purity has a big part. Like what happened with Prahlad, it's not going to happen with us. You know, there are devotees in the Soviet Union that were tortured. Now, some of them survived, and probably some of them didn't. But those that went through that, their Krishna consciousness was protected. So it's commensurate with purity, and also the Lord has his way of doing things that the worldly people can't understand. Why is he doing that instead of this? Because if I was in charge, I'd do this, not that. But his protection is there. And how? Who can say? Time will tell.
Thank you.
Behind you.
So Guru Maharaj, towards the end, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was in complete seclusion in Gambhira, so at that time, Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, and all the very close devotees, they were all there, disciples. So how did they all respond, like knowing that Mahaprabhu is there, but he's in complete seclusion? And so I just wondered, like, how was that?
What was their question that you're saying was their question? How did they respond to his being alone in Gambhira? That's what you want to know?
Yeah.
I mean, they were given a service assignment. And when anyone is given a service assignment, you do your service assignment. And everything is complete, you do your service assignment. You don't have to worry about Mahaprabhu being alone in Gambhira, because he had people looking after him, especially Srup Damodar and Ramananda Roy, who most qualified. So he's in good hands. He's not alone. He's the personality of Godhead. He can take care of himself. And, they knew that. Now, that doesn't mean they were callous, but they weren't going to run down to Jagannath Puri and do something. Here's a nice example, one that I like very much. Gopal Bhatta Goswami was told, like Kurma Brahman was told, and the other village people were told, no, don't follow me, but you stay in your place. So Gopal Bhatta wanted to travel also with Mahaprabhu. He said, no, you stay here and serve your parents. When they are ready for you to take on some service, your service is you go to Vrindavan and assist Rupa and Sanatan. When his parents left this world, he was still young, and Mahaprabhu was also still on the planet. So, the geography of India, to go from where his parents were, Sri Rangam, to Vrindavan, directly north almost, or close to directly north, is Puri. He didn't go to Puri. He went straight to Vrindavan. I find that amazing, because it wouldn't be in denial, but he was so fixed on, I've got an instruction, he just did what the instruction was. So they have an instruction. So they're living, that's who they are. They're fulfilling the instruction given to them by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Now there was communication back and forth. They would send a Brahmin messenger and he would send messenger back, and they didn't have text messages and all that stuff and Zoom calls, but they had communications back and forth, and they had their assignment. When Gopal reached Vrindavan, they sent a messenger. He reached Vrindavan. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sent a message back to Gopal, along with some of his paraphernalia, for him to worship for the rest of his life. So there were activities and exchanges, but they had their service. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for the class. My question is regarding Chota Haridas Thakur. So he committed some mistake. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was not very happy with that, and he took extreme measure.
He sure did.
Yeah, so to repent that. So as practicing devotees, we might face some reversals or some, fall downs. So how we should reconcile those and how we should repent.
How you should repent?
Repent, yeah.
Repent. Everything depends upon the circumstance. So my standard answer for a question like this is, it depends. And then you start to look at some of the variables, like how severe was the offense, how severe was the reaction for the offense. The first and foremost thing for a Vaishnava is your mind stays on Krishna. Yena tena pakarena mana krishnena veshayat. Somehow or another, your mind stays on Krishna. And when your mind is staying on Krishna, and here comes some reversal. Second thing, devotee understands, you should understand, I should understand, when something comes that's unexpected, what's going on? And for a devotee, it's not, this is the fructification of my karma. Although one may think, because of my past misdeeds, I'm having to undergo some difficulty. But it's not a one-to-one karma exchange. It may be even more severe than you think should be, or whatever the worldly calculation. But what's coming in the form of a reversal, in Bhaktisiddhanta's language, in Sri Brahma Samhita, it's Krishna is being kind by uprooting from the very core of one's heart the tendency for material consciousness. The root cause of our material existence is, he writes, nescience and sinful desire. So it's being uprooted. So that's how you and I and Vaishnavas should process when reversals come. Now, your specific question was, what way should we be repentant? It's commensurate with the misdeed, or commensurate with, even if you may not know what the misdeed is, commensurate with the circumstance. Somehow or another. That's a nice phrase. Somehow or another. The circumstances come. There must be, so one can think, there must be some contamination. You can say something back there, my past activity, or something that's in here that's being carried in my heart, that Krishna wants to remove it. So I'm all for it. Please remove it from my heart. And when one is accepting of the exchange with Krishna, where he's removing from one's heart things that don't belong there, then the pain of the experience of the reversal just subsides, and it even can vanish, because the misfortune becomes opportunity for deeper shelter. Then comes, for example, the misfortune of the Pandavas and Kunti. She understood very clearly. They understood very clearly. It's the opportunity for Krishna to make us more dependent upon him. And that's what they did. They became more dependent upon him. I was just reading this nice section from Mahabharata describing the difficulty of Draupadi when she was being disrobed and she was calling Krishna's name. The description in Mahabharata, the Ganguly translation was, Krishna was resting with Rukmini and he heard Draupadi calling, and immediately left the side of Rukmini and went quickly, immediately to Draupadi to protect her. So when one feelingly calls out, because one may, as she did, try to do something to protect herself, but when she recognized that was not possible, because Dushashana is so much stronger than me, although she was a powerful lady. One Sako and she knocked Jayadratha to the ground. Powerful king. But Dushashana was more powerful. So she called out to Krishna and he came. So you call out to Krishna. Depends on the circumstance. But it's never, your thoughts should never depart from Krishna's shelter. You consider this as purification due to the impure things. The very root cause of my material existence is being yanked away. Let it be. And if there's need for some kind of calling out for Krishna, you call out for Krishna. Like this other question of, what's going on in Bangladesh and whatever else might happen in the course of our lives and others' lives. It happens. It happens for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else? Online question.
How can we deal the reversal, the losing of association of devotees?
That's the same question. Okay. Thank you very much for joining. And sorry for being a little bit of a police officer in the beginning, but if somebody else wants to be an assistant police officer in the future, please do that. Srila Prabhupada ki, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki.